lunchtime video, Neil Atkinson and a bronzed Gareth Roberts. He's returned from his holiday. What a time he had. He's come back looking like a different man. He's looking 5 years younger, which now means he looks 23.
Neil.
How are you?
I'm alright, I'm refreshed. I had a good holiday. But walk back into momentous news.
Huge.
And yeah, what news it is, and there's stuff going on in the city today. There's a vigil later today, isn't there? Is it 5:45?
5:45, yeah.
St George's Hall. Obviously worth your time to get down to that if you can. We're right by Liverpool Town Hall here, and at the moment the clock's permanently set to 3:06. Front pages of the Echo as well. Obviously, I've got some of the papers here. Brilliant front page today from the Echo. Angels and demons.
It sounds like a cliche to sort of praise the Echo's coverage at Hillsborough, not because everyone does, and the individuals involved, specifically Eleanor Barlow, who's done fantastic work. But I think in general it's worth pointing out the Echo's long-standing support over the Justice campaign, but also the 2.5 years through the inquest. The Echo's had someone there every day. Mostly it has been Eleanor Barlow. Sometimes it's someone else, and it's worth pointing out that literally costs money. That means you're taking a reporter out and you send them out to go and do that sort of stuff. And there's you've worked in the industry, Gareth. It's been a major commitment by the Liverpool Echo, and one which is worthy of it's worthy of praise and applause.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the Echo's taken quite a bit of stick at times over the years for various things, not least it's printed obviously in Greater Manchester, and that caused a bit of upset in the city that jobs went from Liverpool to Greater Manchester in terms of the printing, but they've still got a huge office in Liverpool. They've still got a huge commitment to Liverpool.
There's hundreds of people working in that office.
Yeah, I mean, and what the coverage of Hillsborough's been second to none all the way through. I mean, if you go back, I know Matt put something on our Facebook this morning. You go all the way back to the 80s. Straight after the disaster, the coverage then was brilliant. Straight away the Echo was challenging the Sun headlines, for instance, and always has done all the way through. So I think in terms of this, there's been some criticism levelled at the Echo over various things over the years. Over Hillsborough, I think, like I say, the coverage is second to none. It's been brilliant, and like Neil says, to put someone on the job and have them go into the inquest day in, day out, a full day. I mean, Eleanor Barlow deserves every credit for that, because I think she said herself in a piece that's on the Echo that it kind of helped that she wasn't emotionally attached, certainly not at first. She couldn't help but become emotionally attached because of what she was dealing with. But I mean, as Neil says, I've worked as a journalist, so I don't think I could have done that. I don't think I could have gone every day and done that. I would have been in bits. I've spoken to other journalists who've covered Hillsborough at various points down the years, who have been attached, who've been from Liverpool, who've supported Liverpool, who've known people who were there and all the rest of it. And it's impossible not to get emotional about it. So yeah, I mean, every credit given to the Echo, and to be fair, I've picked up a few national newspapers on my way in today. I haven't had time to read them all yet, but Brian Reid there is another one who's been absolutely brilliant right the way through. Obviously he understands, he's a Liverpool fan, he's a Liverpool man, he's also a brilliant writer, and I'm sure you've all seen overnight that it's on pretty much the front page of everything. The Telegraph there. It's
interesting as well. Just on the sort of the general, Jim White's writing about it inside the Telegraph there. It's a good piece, the Jim White piece, and it was noticeable. Our friend Steve Armstrong, Jim also writes for United We Stand, and it was notable. Steve yesterday, he's actually sent me a picture of being in the Leppens Lane end in '85 in a warm up with this unbelievable crush, and I think it's worth, when we're going through all this, remembering the numbers of people across football who knew in 1989. They knew then. Football supporters knew in 1989 what they just knew innately, because they'd been there and they'd seen it. And there's so many contemporaneous reports of the first when Saturday comes afterwards and so on and so forth. But it was because, as has been mentioned, the demonisation of both working class people and of football supporters that ran right the way through the 1980s. It didn't spring into being overnight. It ran right the way through the 1980s, which is one of the reasons why why. Firstly, why football supporters collectively knew, because they knew they'd been referred to as the enemy within, but also it's why, for instance, that message was such a difficult message to get out, and it's just simply worth, it's hard to put the context in, it's worth a pause for thought to understand the intense socio-political context of the 1980s, who created it and how they created it. And trust me, there's tons of issues around the Stuart Smith scrutiny from after 1997, so on and so forth. There's so much that the Labour government of 97 could have done very, very differently, but it's important to be absolutely crystal clear. The demonisation of the British working class takes place under a Conservative government that's elected in 1979 and serves right the way through until 1997. That's where that takes place. You can say, don't politicise this, don't be like that, blah, blah, blah. Everyone was at it. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. Let's be really, really clear about that. No, they weren't. There was only one government that was using the police in the mid-1980s as an army. That is what happened, and there's tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of things that went wrong under the Labour governments in 1997 and 2001, 2005. There's absolutely tons of them. I'll give you a long list, but this is not one of them. Could they have done more? Should they have done more? Absolutely, but it's also worth remembering as well that it's Andy Burnham coming and then going and convincing Gordon Brown that starts the wheels in motion towards the Hillsborough Independent Panel report.
I think it's really important, that point you make as well, about that football fans knew. I mean, Hillsborough feels like, for many people understandably, they'll see it almost now as it's been like a Liverpool thing, and it isn't a Liverpool thing, it's a national thing, and it was a national thing then. You know, it was the front page of When Saturday Comes at the time, but also, I mean, I've written for fanzines down the years, and I put stuff together at different points in history, and I remember putting something together. I've still got them at home. I've got a Bradford City fanzine where the Bradford City fans wrote about how it could have been them. I've got a QPR fanzine where the QPR fans wrote about how it could have been them. I've got a Tottenham fanzine, same, and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. You know, there's this thing where, you know, Liverpool as a city, Liverpool as a group of people, Liverpool fans, where had the finger pointed at them over and over again and were told that they were lying, but there's football fans all over the country who've always known, they know now. You know, Neil's mentioned Steve Armstrong. I think you all know now that he writes for United We Stand, that he's friends with us, he's a great lad, and I noticed that, you know, he put a tweet out straight away as soon as the verdict was announced, and he said, look, it wasn't their fault, and
they were the victims.
They weren't the victims, so can we stop singing that song?
Indeed. There's other stuff that's come through today, just in general. We've got a new show that's come out, Wildcard, today. We asked you to vote on last week. That's come out today as part of Tour Player. Tuesday Review and Tour Unwrapped came out last night. Obviously, yesterday was overtaken by these events and all that sort of stuff. But we've got a commitment through the Tour Player stuff that we're going to keep putting material out. What there isn't is a final word on this now. As was repeatedly published yesterday, the IPCC and Operation Resolve is ongoing. There's tons and tons and tons to come. There's no sort of end on this, and so what we're not going to do is a big and here's the Anfield Wrap special. There's not going to be that. What there'll be is when we're ready to talk to people, and when people are ready to talk to us, importantly, we'll speak to them about what's gone on, and we're just going to put the material out as free podcasts right the way through, as and when we see fit, and as and when the opportunity comes up. As I said before, there's the two shows there. There's a midnight caller later today. There'll be the wrap up that'll do the more conventional football stuff with John and Andy later on. They're currently in Villarreal. They'll do it from Villarreal. That's everything that's knocking around on Tour Player and all that sort of stuff. But we wanted to go
stuff to go up on the site as well. I'm working through that now.
He's come back. I'll have to pile it for him. All of that stuff sort of coming and going. But spend a bit of time today if you can. Obviously, I know yesterday was momentous, but there's tons and tons of paperwork knocking around. There's lots and lots of pieces on the Liverpool Echo website. There's the long piece from David Conn, which is worthy of more than just a nod. It's absolutely fantastic.
The video is really good that he's done as well.
Yeah. It's one of those. This, you know, everyone's got to deal with it in their own way. There's no right reactions. There's no, if you feel as though already it's something you want to leave to the weekend or at a later date, that's completely understandable. As I said before, we'll be keeping the Tour Player stuff going right the way through, and there's a football match tomorrow night as well. John and Andy will talk to you about that later on, but that's me and Gareth. We'll see you in a bit.
Cheers.